Chapter 13 of The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 13 The Emperor's Gift. Gutman opened the door. A glad smile lighted his fat face. He held out a hand and said, "Ah, come in, sir. Thanks for coming. Come in." Spade shook the hand and entered. The boy went in behind him. The fat man shut the door. Spade took the pistols from his pockets and held them out to Gutman. "Here, you shouldn't let the lad run around with these. He'll get himself hurt." The fat man laughed merrily and took the pistols. "Well, well," he said, "what's this?" He looked from Spade to the boy. Spade said, "A crippled newsboy took them away from him, but I made him give them up." The white-faced boy took the pistols out of Gutman's hands and pocketed them. The boy did not speak. Gutman laughed again. "By gad, sir," he told Spade, "you're a chap worth knowing, an amazing character. Come in, sit down. Give me your hat." The boy left the room by the door to the right of the entrance. The fat man installed Spade in a green plush chair by the table, pressed a cigar upon him, held a light to it, mixed whiskey and carbonated water, put one glass in Spade's hand, and holding the other in his own, sat down facing Spade. "Now, sir," he said, "I hope you'll let me apologize for—" "Never mind that," Spade said. "Let's talk about the black bird." The fat man cocked his head a little to one side and regarded Spade with fond eyes. "All right, sir," he agreed. "Let's." He took a sip from his glass. "This is going to be the most astounding thing you've ever heard of, sir, and I say that knowing that a man of your caliber in your profession must have run across a lot of things." Spade nodded politely. The fat man screwed up his eyes and asked, "What do you know, sir, about the Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, later called the Knights of Rhodes and other things?" Spade waved his cigar. "Not much, only what I can remember from history in school. Crusaders or something." "Very good. Now, you don't remember that Suleiman the Magnificent chased them out of Rhodes in 1523? "No." "Well, sir, he did, and they settled in Crete. And they stayed there for 7 years until 1530, when they persuaded the Emperor Charles V to give them—" Gutman held up 3 puffy fingers and counted them— "Malta, Gozo, and Tripoli." "Yes." "Yes, sir, but with these conditions. They were to pay the Emperor each year the tribute of one," he held up a finger, "falcon in acknowledgment that Malta was still under Spain, and if they ever left the island it was to revert to Spain. Understand? He was giving it to them, but not unless they occupied it, and they couldn't give it or sell it to anybody else." "Yes." The fat man looked over his shoulders at the 3 closed doors, hunched his chair a few inches closer to Spade's, and reduced his voice to a husky whisper. "Have you any conception of the extreme, the immeasurable wealth of the Order at that time?" "If I remember, they were pretty well fixed," Spade said. Gutman smiled indulgently. "Pretty well, sir, is putting it mildly." His whisper became lower and harsher. "They were rolling in wealth, sir. You have no idea. None of us has any idea. For years they had preyed on the Saracens, had taken God only knows what spoils in gems, precious metals, silks, ivories, the top cream luxuries of the East. That is history, sir. We all know that the holy wars to them, as to the Templars, were largely a matter of loot. Well now, the Emperor Charles had given them Malta, and all the rent he asks is 1 insignificant bird per annum, just as a matter of form. What could be more natural than for these immeasurably wealthy knights to look around for some way of showing their gratitude? Well, sir, that's exactly what they did, and they hit on the happy thought of sending Charles, for the first year's tribute, not an insignificant live bird, but a glorious falcon encrusted from head to foot with the finest jewels in their coffers. And remember, they had fine ones, the finest out of Asia." Gutman stopped whispering. His sleek dark eyes examined Spade's face, which was placid. The fat man asked, "Well, sir, what do you think of that?" "I don't know." The fat man smiled. "These are facts, historical facts. Not schoolbook history, not Mr. Wells's history, but history nonetheless." He leaned forward. "The archives of the order from the 12th century are still on Malta. They are not intact, but what is there holds no less than 3" he held up 3 fingers, "references that can't be to anything else but this jeweled falcon. In J. Delavie de la Rue's Les Archives de l'Ordre de Saint-Jean there is a reference to it, oblique to be sure, but still a reference. And the unpublished, because unfinished at the time of his death, supplement to Pauli's Del Origine ed Instituto del Sacro Militar Ordine has a clear and unmistakable statement of these facts I am telling you." "All right," Spade said. "All right. Grandmaster Villiers de l'Isle d'Adam had this foot-high jeweled bird made by Turkish slaves in the castle of San Angelo, and sent it to Charles, who was in Spain. He sent it in a galley commanded by a French knight named Cormier or Corvair, a member of the order." His voice dropped to a whisper again. "It never reached Spain." He smiled with compressed lips and asked, "You know of Barbossa, Redbeard, Kheyr-ed-Din?" "No." "A famous admiral of buccaneers sailing out of Algiers then. Well, sir, he took the knight's galley, and he took the bird. The bird went to Algiers. That's a fact. It's a fact that the French historian Pierre Dain put in one of his letters from Algiers. He wrote that the bird had been there for more than 100 years, and that it had been carried away by Sir Francis Verney, an English adventurer who was with the Algerian buccaneers for a while when he left Algiers. Maybe he wasn't, but Pierre Dain believed it, and that's good enough for me. There's nothing said about the bird in Lady Frances Verney's Memoirs of the Verney Family during the 17th century. I looked, and it's pretty certain that Sir Francis didn't have the bird when he died in a Messina hospital in 1615. He was stone broke. But, sir, there's no denying that the falcon did go to Sicily. It was there, and it came into the possession of Victor Amadeus II some time after he became king in 1713, and it was one of his gifts to his wife when he married in Chambéry after abdicating. That is a fact, sir. Caruti, the author of Storia del Regno de Vittorio Amadeo II, vouched for it. Maybe he and his wife, took it along with them to Turin when he tried to revoke his abdication. Anyhow, it turned up next in the possession of a Spaniard who had been with the army that took Naples in 1734, the father of Don José Munino y Redondo, Count of Floridablanca, who was Charles III's chief minister. There's nothing to show that it didn't stay in the same family until the end of the Carlist War in 1840. Then it showed up in Paris at just about the time that Paris was full of Carlists who had had to get out of Spain. One of them must have brought it with him, but whoever he was, he didn't know anything about its value. It had been painted or enameled over. The chances are, during the Carlist trouble in Spain, to look like nothing more than a fairly interesting black statuette. And in that disguise, sir, it was kicked around Paris for 70 years, by private owners and dealers too stupid to see what it was under its skin. For 70 years, sir, this marvelous item was, as you might say, a football in the gutters of Paris, until, in 1911, a Greek dealer named Karaleos Konstantinides found it in a curio shop. It didn't take Karaleos long to discover what it was and to acquire it. No thickness of enamel could conceal value from either his eyes or nose. Well, sir, Karaleos was the man who traced most of its history, who identified it as what it is. I got wind of it and finally got most of the story out of him, though I have been able to add a few details since. Karaleos was in no hurry to convert it into money at once. He knew that, enormous as its intrinsic value was, A far higher, a terrific price could be obtained for it once its authenticity was established beyond doubt. Possibly he planned to do business with one of the modern descendants of the old order. There are, or were at that time, several: the English Order of St. John of Jerusalem, the Prussian Johanniterorden, and the Italian and German Iangus of the Sovereign Order of Malta. The fat man raised his glass, smiled at its emptiness, and rose to fill it and Spade's. "You begin to believe me a little?" he asked as he worked the siphon. "I haven't said I didn't." "No," Gutman chuckled, "but how you looked." He sat down, drank generously, and patted his mouth with a white handkerchief. "Well, sir, to keep it safe while pursuing his researches into its history, Carolaios had re-enamelled the bird, apparently just as it is now. 1 year to the very day after he had acquired it, that was perhaps 3 months after he had admitted his find to me, I picked up the Times in London and read that his establishment had been burglarized and him murdered. I was in Paris the next day." He shook his head sorrowfully. "The bird was gone. By gad, sir, I was wild. I didn't believe anybody else knew about it. I didn't believe he had told anybody but me. A great quantity of stuff had been taken, which made me think that the thief had simply taken the Falcon along with the rest of his plunder, not knowing what it was. Because I assure you that a thief who knew its value would not burden himself with anything else. No, sir, at least not anything less than crown jewels." He closed his eyes and smiled complacently at an inner thought. He opened his eyes and continued. "That was 17 years ago. Well, sir, it took me 17 years to locate that bird, but I did it. I wanted it, and I'm not a man that's easily discouraged when he wants something." His smile grew broad. "I wanted it, and I found it. I wanted it, and I'm going to have it." He drained his glass, dried his lips again, and returned his handkerchief to his pocket. "I traced it to the home of a Russian general, Kamedov, in a Constantinople suburb. He didn't know a thing about it. It was nothing but a black enamel bird to him, but his natural contrariness, the natural contrariness of a Russian general, kept him from letting me have it when I made him an offer. Maybe in my eagerness I was a little clumsy, though not very. I don't know about that, but I do know I wanted it, and I was afraid this stupid soldier might begin to investigate, might chip off some of the enamel. So I sent some agents to get it. Well, sir, they got it, and I haven't got it." He stood up and carried his empty glass to the table. "But I'm going to get it. Your glass, sir." "Then the bird doesn't belong to any of you?" Spade asked. "But to a Russian named Kamedov?" "Belong?" the fat man said jovially. "Well, sir, you might say it belonged to the King of Spain, but I don't see how you can honestly grant anybody else clear title to it, except by right of possession." He clucked. "An article of that value that has passed from hand to hand by such means is clearly the property of whoever can get hold of it." "Then it is Miss O'Shaughnessy's now?" "No, sir, except as my agent." Spade said, "Oh," ironically. Gutman, looking thoughtfully at the cork of the whiskey bottle in his hand, asked, "There's no doubt that she has got it now?" "Not much." "Where?" "I don't know exactly." The fat man set the bottle on the table with a bang. "But you said you did," he protested. Spade made a careless gesture with one hand. "I meant to say I know where to get it when the time comes." The pink bulbs in Gutman's face arranged themselves more happily. "And you do?" he asked. "Yes." "Where?" Spade grinned and said, "Leave that to me. That's my end." "When?" "When I'm ready." The fat man pursed his lips, and smiling with only slight uneasiness, asked, "Mr. Spade, where is Miss O'Shaughnessy now?" "In my hands, safely put away." Gutman smiled approvingly. "Trust you for that, sir," he said. "Well now, sir, before we sit down to talk prices, answer me this. How soon can you, Or how soon are you willing to produce the Falcon?" "A couple of days." The fat man nodded. "That is satisfactory. But I forget our nourishment." He turned to the table, poured whiskey, squirted charged water into it, set a glass at Spade's elbow, and held his own aloft. "Well, sir, here's to a fair bargain and a profit large enough for both of us." They drank. The fat man sat down. Spade asked, "What's your idea of a fair bargain?" Gutman held his glass to the light, looked at it as if he liked it, took another long drink, and said, "I have two proposals to make, sir, and either is fair. Take your choice. I will give you $25,000 when you deliver the Falcon, and another $25,000 as soon as I get to New York. Or I will give you 1/4, 25%, of what I realize on the Falcon. There you are, sir, an almost immediate $50,000, or a vastly greater sum within, say, a couple of months." Spade drank and asked, "How much greater?" "Vastly," the fat man repeated. "Will you believe me if I name the amount that seems the probable minimum?" "Why not?" "What would you say, sir, to $500,000? Spade narrowed his eyes. "Then you think the dingus is worth $2 million?" Gutman smiled serenely. "In your own words, why not?" he asked. Spade emptied his glass and set it on the table. He put his cigar in his mouth, took it out, looked at it, and put it back in. His yellow-gray eyes were faintly muddy. He said, "That's a hell of a lot of dough." The fat man agreed. "That's a hell of a lot of dough." He leaned forward and patted Spade's knee. "That is the absolute rock-bottom minimum. Or Kereleos Constantinides was a blithering idiot, and he wasn't." Spade removed the cigar from his mouth again, frowned at it with distaste, and put it on the smoking stand. He shut his eyes hard, opened them again. Their muddiness had thickened. The minimum, huh? And the maximum?" he asked. An unmistakable sh followed the X in maximum as he pronounced it. "The maximum?" Gutman held his empty hand out, palm up. "I refuse to guess. You'd think me crazy. I don't know. There's no telling how high it could go, sir, and that's the one and only truth about it." Spade pulled his sagging lower lip tight against the upper. He shook his head impatiently. A sharp, frightened gleam awoke in his eyes and was smothered by the deepening muddiness. He stood up, helping himself with his hands on the arms of the chair. He shook his head again, took an uncertain step forward, laughed thickly, and muttered, "Damn you, the drops." Gutman jumped up and pushed his chair back. His fat jiggled. His eyes were dark holes in a bulbous pink face. Spade swung his head slowly from side to side until his dull eyes were, if not focused on, at least pointed at the corridor door. He took another unsteady step. The fat man called sharply, "Wilmer!" A door opened and the boy came in. Spade took a third step. His face was grayish now, with jaw muscles standing out like tumors under his ears. His legs did not straighten again after his fourth step, and his muddy eyes were almost covered by their lids. He took the fifth step. The boy walked over and stood close to Spade, a little in front of him, but not directly between man and door. The boy's right hand was inside his coat over his heart. The corners of his mouth twitched. Spade essayed his sixth step. The boy's leg darted out across Spade's leg in front. Spade tripped over the interfering leg and crashed face down on the floor. The boy, keeping his right hand under his coat, looked down at Spade. Spade tried to get up. The boy drew his right foot far back and kicked Spade's temple. The kick rolled Spade over on his side. Once more he tried to get up, could not, and went to sleep. End of chapter 13.